It's Alex from Ethyl's Garage here again for another update. As you can see behind me, we've been making some progress in the warehouse and the pile is getting smaller. Somebody asked me recently, where do we get some of our most interesting books that we've got? Well, a lot of them come out of private collections from people who've been collecting for years and years and are downsizing. Today we'll take a look and open some boxes from one of those collections. Come on along. Here's a small pile of boxes from one of those private collections we've acquired. Let's open some of them. Let's take one of these into the warehouse, open it up, and see what kind of treasures we can find inside. And let's see what we have in this box here. Let's open it up and see what treasures await. This is from a collection from a collector who was interested in automotive design, racing history, all kinds of interesting subjects like that. First book out of the box is a book on the Mercedes-Benz designer Peter Pfeiffer. There's a classic history book on the Mille Miglia from Italy. This is long out of print. There's some demand for this. Was originally published in 1979. Here's a specialist book from Giorgio Nada Editore, very respected publish house in Italy. There were maybe 1,500 copies of this book published, and it covers the lesser known, the smaller cars, mostly privateer cars that would have run in the Mille Miglia in 1957, the last year of the race. Here's a classic book from Floyd Clymer Publishing in Los Angeles on the Carrera Pan America, road race that used to take place in Mexico, now been recreated as a historic race. We'll flip through these in detail in a little bit. Book on the history of Maserati from 1926. To 1992, so this was up through the De Tomaso era before they were acquired by Fiat. And then along with that, Fiat, there's the Linea Fiat book. This is a wonderful limited production book that was published on the 100th anniversary of the birth of Giorgio Agnelli, the founder of Fiat. And at the bottom of the box, very classic exotica, La Temporadas Argentinas. This is a book, very scholarly book by Guillermo Iacono that covers racing in South America, particularly Argentina, during the Perón years, when they made a very strong attempt to make Argentina on a par with Europe as a racing capital. And so the government spent a lot of money inviting Formula racing teams from Europe and North America to come to Argentina and participate in races. They did a series of races every year for a number of years until the first revolution. Let's take a look at the books in a little more detail. Here's the Linea Fiat book. That's Fiat Line in Italian. Still has its original slipcase. Most of those have gotten lost over the years. It's got a wonderful period cover, which is a posterized photograph. The book was published on the centennial of the birth of Giovanni Agnelli, the man who made Fiat a world power in automobiles. And it goes from the very beginning all the way on up. The first Fiats were basically horseless carriages, because Fiat's been a manufacturer from the very beginning of the automobile. They moved into larger cars. They built cars like this in their factory on the east coast of the United States up until World War I forced them to withdraw from the U.S. market. They were very heavy in racing. This is a 1911 race car. Fiat raced in the Indianapolis 500 from 1911 to 1915. They placed on the podium with their race cars. Larger touring cars evolved. These were also manufactured in North America as well as in Europe. The race cars kept getting more sophisticated. Fiat was, in the early days, really considered a luxury car manufacturer, and they built things like this town car and then this open phaeton. Here's a Fiat speed car, and then a middle-class Fiat. Fiat more for the masses. Here's the type of car that was racing in Europe between the two wars. And then along came Fiat's cars that really made them household. The Fiat 500 and 600. The 500 really, the Topolino was the first 500, the first people's car from Fiat. And then in '55 they came out with the Nuovo 500, which was the update to replace the Topolino. And then this was replaced again in the 2000s with the Fiat 500 that we think of today. This also talks about Fiat's technology and design, how they were on the forefront of testing. Most people don't realize that Fiat was the first company in the world to have a privately owned nuclear reactor, which started operating in 1957. And they worked in a lot of areas. They had an aeronautics division. They developed the tilting train technology that is still licensed by all passenger train manufacturers around the world to this day. They still get a royalty on that. And they were very popular in racing and rallying. This book also has a section on how they actually produce a prototype. It's a wonderful book. Was given out at the Fiat dealers rather than sold to the general public. So it's a fairly rare item nowadays. And this is a really nice copy that still has the slipcover with it. If you'd like to purchase any of the books that you're seeing today, remember, we are a bookstore. We're not a museum. These are all for sale. Las Temporadas Argentinas is a book that, when I took it out of the box, I mentioned, covers a period in time when, after Perón had come to power in Argentina, and he was trying to remake Argentina along the model of a European state. And so to modernize things, he invited and put a lot of money into technology and invited racing teams from all over the world to come to Argentina and compete, offered pretty substantial prize money to entice people to come that far. And this particular book covers 47 through 49, the first period of the racing. And it's written by a noted scholar. It's dual language in English on this side, and then in actually looks like Portuguese on that side. Got a lot of documentation. Excellent scholarly book. This is a book from a publisher known for the quality of the work and the authors they represent. And this is an out-of-print book, and they probably published maybe 2,500 copies of it when it was new. And it's pretty much the only source if you're interested in that. It's interesting not just for the racing, but also for the social history of Argentina that's portrayed in the book. This Maserati history book is an interesting thing for a more general audience. Shows you all of the Maserati history from the beginning in 1926, when they started out as a racing car company, through several ownerships, through the time of De Tomaso, when he came out with the cars you see at the top here, and then one of the great racing cars from the 1950s, racing cars from the 30s and 40s. It's just also an excellent book, out of print for quite a while. The later histories that have been published after after Fiat purchased the company and kind of combined them with Ferrari for some of the production, don't carry quite as much of the early detail. They've glossed over some of the things that this book actually provides a lot of detail on. This is just a cool period piece. This is the Book of the Mexican Road Race, published by Floyd Clymer's Publications out of Los Angeles. Floyd Clymer Publications was an early automotive publisher. They did a lot of self-help how-to books for maintaining your car, but they also did history books. And the Carrera Pan America was a grueling Mexican road race, an endurance race that reached its peak in the 50s. And has now been recreated as a millionaires tour race, historic race, more rally now than race. But this book, this is probably one of the few surviving copies of this in the world. And this is another very nice low production book. This covers the smaller classes, the minor classes that competed in the Millimilga in 1957. It's from Giorgio Nadori Editore, which is a very respected Italian publisher. It's dual language, Italian and English. Covers a lot of really nicely detailed documentation with wonderful period photos of all the cars that competed in the Millimilga in its final year. It's just amazing. If your car's in this book, you're eligible to participate in the historic Millimilga rally that's run every year now. And then this is the history book that covered the race that ran from 27 to 57 was the last year that it was a race. And so this is published in the early 60s, and it provides a lot of early pictures of the Millimilga, book that would be very hard to find nowadays, but we have a nice copy in wonderful condition. And then the last book that was in this particular box is from the Automobilia series. This is number 17 of the Carmen series on Peter Pfeiffer, Mercedes-Benz design. We have a bunch of other books in this series as well, but it talks about the history of this designer, his early years, the various different projects he worked on for Mercedes. And then it has something about the development center and the factory. Shows the process for producing the cars. Wonderful series of books on modern designers who, in many cases, the books in this Automobilia series are the only really serious book on this particular designer that they've done. A lot of interesting books. I have a bunch more boxes from this collection to open. We'll cover some more of those soon. Thanks for coming along today for another short look at the progress we're making here at Ethyl's Garage, your home for unique automotive books. Thanks again. Remember to like, subscribe, comment if you'd like, and we will see you again soon. Bye now.